Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. And unfortunately, today for Exodus 33 and potentially 34, we will not have our resident scholar, Lorence Yufa. He had to be called away for something else. And so, as a last minute stand in, we have Dr. Kip Davis. Welcome aboard, sir.
Hi.
So thrilled to be here.
Yeah.
So, anybody want to give us a forward as to what we could expect from Exodus 33?
Well, it's basically a continuation of the what happened after the golden calf story.
Yeah, it's the last bit of plot before we get back into God as a very, very bad fashion / tent designer / make me all the pretty things for my priests. It's totes me for real, guys.
Yes, and give me your prettiest babes as well. Okay, so I've got a couple more comments, or a couple new comments. Is Ezeal Dawn Arrow says, "Hey Aaron, I always enjoyed watching your vids, but I'm wondering if you could showcase believers talking about good passages and bad ones in any/all scriptures. Truly good, real, equal extremists do things." I'm not really sure what that's all supposed to say. The concept is not bad. I remember having one of the last times I ever had religious canvassers at my door. There was this little old lady and a pretty young woman that showed up at my door from the Jehovah's Witnesses, I think they were, and they were trying to advocate for the Bible. I'm like, yeah, the Bible is so much horse shit that, I mean, yeah, you've got a couple of quotable phrases that make nice bumper stickers, but that's really all of it, and and the rest of it is just festering carbuncle. It's awful. And they said, well, isn't it nice to have a couple of pearls of wisdom in there? Yeah, isn't it nice to have lipstick on a pig? Because that's what you got. But anyway, I think that yeah, we can compare. We can have somebody. We can do a show on that, and we can talk about name all of your good verses, and I got a shit ton of bad ones. And I don't know of any. I know of two or three maybe good ones. Good bumper sticker quotations. Maybe decent for a T-shirt, but the only reason that they're good is because they contradict the rest of the book. And then Eric Wander offers 50 Argentine
Peso.
pesos.
Yes.
Thank you. Can we blaspheme it just a little bit more? It's not enough for me. Laughing out loud. Thank you very much. Let's get into that.
Oh, we have another comment.
Cracker.
Blasphemy.
We have another comment.
Oh, another comment. Matt White says, Aaron, you realize you're reading from a banned book, right?
That is funny.
In Utah,
albeit
right?
in the state of Utah. Yes, banned in the state of Utah, which
Utah.
almost makes the Bible cool.
Well, they put out all those guidelines to try and keep any books from being around children that mention that gay people might, occasionally exist.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately, they undid that one.
the
The school
festering
board
gob
said, you know
of-
what? Ignore our own rules. We're offended by this, which goes to show how useful it is to make your decisions based on who's offended and how loud they scream.
Yeah, and like the festering gob of genocide and incest and rape that is the Bible, maybe not really appropriate for children. Maybe it's-
Oh, speaking of which, I wanted to remind everybody that though Lawrence could not be here, I wanted to show off this shirt. I am unforgivable, and here are the biblical verses explaining why that is.
Woo!
So,
Nice.
Yes,
That's
that's some of
the
Lawrence's merch.
that is Lawrence's merch.
Yeah, so those verses aren't fit to put on a t-shirt, but just
All right, then. So, who is reading today?
Well, I read last time, so I will cede the pleasure and privilege to another.
I will read
Lalandra, from your office in the Fortress of Ultimate Darkness, would you like to read?
it. Yeah, sure.
Okay, read up to 11.
Ultimate Darkness. See, I have my Cthulhu shirt today. Okay. Well, let's do this. Because this the Bible. I don't know if we can top the Bible, Lauren. In debauchery and darkness. In our house.
Yeah.
It
That's
is
my
a tall
five.
order.
I know. We do
Hard.
have 40-something snakes.
Well,
I
you're making a good start.
Yeah,
Give it the old college try, right?
that's right. Okay, here we go. We're still exodusing
Will you
from
shut up?
the land of Egypt. And when last we left the intrepid Hebrews, they were arguing about a golden calf. And the Aaronites were like, nah. And then a whole bunch of people died. And so now, here we go. On with our journey. After so much blood is spilled in the desert.
We're going to
Maybe-
continue our tale about the Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, and Chiggerbites.
and the Levites and the Romanites.
Yeah.
Okay. Onward and upward to the land of milk and honey. Okay.
Mm.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Depart and go up hence, thou and the people which thou hast brought up out of the land of Egypt, unto the land which I swear unto Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, saying, Unto thy seed I will give it. And I will send an angel before thee, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not go up in the midst of thee, for thou art a stiff-necked people, lest I consume thee in the way. Ooh. And when the people heard these evil tidings, they mourned. And no man did put on his ornaments. For the Lord had said unto Moses, Say unto the children of Israel, Ye are a stiff-necked people. I will come up into the midst of thee in a moment and consume thee. Therefore now, put off thy ornaments from thee, that I may know what to do unto thee. And the children of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments by the Mount Horeb. And Moses took the tabernacle and pitched it without the camp, afar from the camp, and called it the tabernacle of the congregation. And it came to pass that every one which sought the Lord went unto the tabernacle of the congregation, which was without the camp. And it came to pass, again, when Moses went out unto the tabernacle, that all the people rose up and stood every man at his tent door, and looked after Moses until he was gone into the tabernacle. They're like, is God going to consume us here or something? I added that part. And where am I stopping?
9.
Oh.
Oh,
9?
11. Sorry, 11.
11. And it came to pass, yet again, as Moses, I added that part. As Moses entered to the tabernacle, the cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle. And the Lord talked with Moses. And all the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door. And all the people rose up and worshipped every man in his tent door. And the Lord spake unto Moses, face to face, as a man speaketh to his friend. So God has a face here. And he turned again into the camp. But his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, departed not out of the tabernacle.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a division between authors here. We have the establishing of Joshua. I have to say, I feel like there's two voices here. One trying to remind us constantly that Joshua is Moses' second in command, and the other one trying to remind us of the Aaronic priesthood. So
Yeah, and
wouldn't-
somebody has to play Lawrence here to remind me that this pillar of cloud, a pillar of cloud, does not mean volcano. This is
well,
just
in this
like,
case, it
Not a
swooped
volcano.
over to stand in front of the tent of meeting and be like, I'm here being all sacred. Be scared.
pillar of cloud.
Got to show
Okay.
off and reinforce that there is something. I find it fascinating, though, that there several times the voice of the Lord says, I'm not with you people anymore, because if I'm with you, I will freaking smite the shit out of you. I can't stand the sight of you. Is this where things start to go wrong for the Israelites, perhaps? And also,
Oh,
right in
he'll
that,
later chill. He'll later chill.
yeah. Once Moses talks him down again, changes his mind.
Again. Yeah.
But in that very first line, he talks about how he promised on oath to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. What exactly does the God of the universe take an oath on?
His foreskin.
The
I like
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Sure.
Okay,
I
I'll
don't
start
even
my
know what a
comment.
trough is.
Yahweh doesn't have a foreskin.
I know.
he's
He is
perfect.
circumcised.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay, I'll
he
start my
keeps it in a
commentary.
little pocket.
Yeah.
I just had one comment. I find it
Sure.
interesting that the translation that Landra read kept using the word tabernacle.
Yeah.
The Hebrew is ohel, which means
Ohel.
tent. Which
Yeah.
so I guess from you could understand it that it's referring to the tabernacle that we've been talking about until now.
Yeah,
but
and
from
quick
the-
reminder, I'm
Yeah.
reading the NIV. I
Yeah.
think my wife is reading NIV too. I think
No, she
probably
reads
most of us
KJV.
are.
She read
KJV.
She read
You
King
were
James
reading
Version.
KJV, okay. I don't know what everybody else is reading, but Kip clearly has the oldest version.
It's a different tent. That's the
It's
important
yeah,
thing to
in
notice.
mine it's called the tent of meeting, which
Mm.
Yeah,
could be
yeah, in-
considered distinct from the tabernacle, but I'm wondering if that's
Well,
how
that's
authentic
in
that
Hebrew.
interpretation is.
Well, I didn't start my commentary, but in Hebrew it's ohel moed, which you could say that ohel means tent and moed means meeting, or yeah. I think
Yeah, I'm just
moed-
looking at Kip's screen, and I'm guessing that has to be a much older version than what we
No,
have.
that's part of the Qumran scroll. That's the
Yeah.
scroll.
That's
maybe.
not
It's-
Exodus, unfortunately.
Oh well,
Um,
excuse me. It's in such a small image because we're divided
Yeah,
into
I
9.
know.
That's why I couldn't read it.
and it's also in Hebrew, so unless Aaron knows Hebrew,
Ooh.
Yeah, he has the Babel fish, except
What-
the visual version.
Well,
okay.
this is
Sorry.
all entirely Yahweh's fault anyway. If it wasn't for the Tower of Babel incident, we would be able to read the Hebrew. We wouldn't have this translation issue. So he should have foreseen this.
We'd all be talking Hebrew because that's the language of creation.
Mm.
Of course it is, darling.
Okay, I'll start my
And it-
commentary.
I
Oh,
think
okay.
these
No,
I
I
think
see
these
comment.
verses just show that God isn't omniscient. Land of milk and honey. If he wanted Arn to be a Christian, he should have made a land of beer and spice.
Where be the god of tits
Fair.
and wine?
I'm
He
seeing
hangs out
comments,
in
Bill.
Greece.
All right, I'll read a couple comments. Charlie Melanet says, that's a lot of talk of consuming us. Are Christians sure he wasn't accepting human sacrifices?
I'm pretty
They-
sure he was, but that's a whole
Very
other
strongly
subject.
in denial about that fact. Let's put it that way.
I think
Yeah.
consume in this case is more like consume with fire, like destroy.
Yeah, it's your typical abusive spouse tantrum. This is the part where it's all your fault, and I'm going to blame you, and I'm going to threaten you, and you just don't even deserve me being as good to you as I have been. I can't even look at you. I'm going to storm out and go somewhere and not tell you where I am.
If you weren't so stubborn, I wouldn't have to smite you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
You make me do this.
Why do you make me do these
stiff-necked
things?
Yeah, look what you made me do.
So Minute Rice offers $6.66. It says, so many it came to pass usages. Is this a secret Book of Mormon stream? Should I tell Jimmy to go fuck himself?
In fairness, you should always tell Jimmy to go fuck himself.
Fair.
Okay, I'll start my commentary. Verse 3, I will not go with you. Sana comment, this statement contradicts the promise of verses 2 and 34. Even assuming that the angel is to be understood as an entity apart from God, God has nevertheless just pledged to drive out the native peoples. Accordingly, God's absence from the midst of Israel should be understood, with Ibn Ezra, to mean the cancellation of the order to construct the tabernacle. Verses 4 and 5, Prop comments that this may be an example of hysteron proteon, a rhetorical device where the logical order of a sentence is reversed, since God commands the people to remove their jewelry in verse 5, even though they've already done so in verse 4. Sforno comments that the jewelry refers to the spiritual preparedness that the people attained at the revelation. Giscuni comments that even though they didn't wear jewelry, God still told them not to, since it is more embarrassing to be denied the right to wear jewelry than to simply abstain from doing so from their own free will. Verse 7,
Yeah.
Moses... Oh,
I know
sorry,
what
you wanna
that's
say?
like. They used to kick me out of the mall for showing up wearing studded leather.
Yeah, God seems to have a thing with making people remove their ornaments because the only one who's allowed to look good is him. It's like Bridezilla, but all the time.
I can't believe you're wearing the same ornaments I'm wearing. You need to change.
Yep.
Verse
It
7,
does-
Moses... Oh, you want to say something?
Well,
So-
there is,
so is
there is
God
something
just
which
like-
is.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll be quick and then you can go. I just want to say, like, there is some interesting how a lot of places that we're reading now and last week as well, it's like the men took off their rings and their earrings and stuff like that, which is, it makes sense for the time, but like most religious people this day are like, men can't wear jewelry. And they kind of twist, they go back to these texts and they always seem to twist them around to mean something else. And in this case, it's like they took off their finery and they're like, oh, they were given crowns when they were at Sinai, or like God gave them spiritual armor or something like that. And it's like, maybe they had jewelry. Maybe men wore jewelry and earrings and nose rings, and you're just prude.
Yeah. That just sounds so sensible and reality based. That can't possibly be the answer.
I was gonna say, is God just taking a break because he's pissed? Is that what's going on? He's telling Moses to go out and
He's
put
saying,
up another tent.
he's like,
Give me a
Angel,
break because I gotta chill out.
that's it.
Yeah, he put himself in timeout.
Yeah.
Okay, verse 7, Moses
He's
used
pissed.
to make a
Yeah.
tent. Hebrew Bible reads the tent. KJV reads the tabernacle, but it has not yet been constructed. Kasuto comments that the tent means Moses' tent, as seen in Exodus 18:7, and they came into the tent. Verse 11, speak to Moses face to face. Chacham comments, face to face, i.e. as someone who, while speaking, turns his face in front of the face of whom he is talking to. There is no intention here to say that Moses saw, as it were, the face of God, since it is said, you cannot see my face in verse 20, and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen in verse 23. Rather, the meaning here is that Moses felt that he who resides in the pillar of cloud is turning his speech directly to him. It is like a person who hides his face with a mask, but stands in front of his friend and turns his face towards him to speak to him.
It's just talking about the manner of communication. It's not talking about actual face.
So no contradiction there, huh?
No.
No.
Well, not
Unfortunately,
there,
yes.
just with the other time when it does say that he saw him face to face explicitly.
Yeah, it does say face to face here, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, but,
talking
yeah,
about-
it's a minor
again, it doesn't
contradiction
s-
if
it's
face
an
to face
expression.
means that he could see his face or that they were facing each other.
How do you determine which way a cloud is facing?
You feel it in
Pareidolia.
your spirit.
Yeah, it's true, pareidolia. You could see maybe like a face. Oh, that looks kind of like God's face, maybe in the
You,
cloud.
what you do is you walk around it taking a sniff to see which end is the butt end.
Oh, that's why dogs do that.
Yeah.
Well, he's pissed, and then Moses comes, and they're just gonna, like two friends would, dish it out, be forthright, comforting, direct with each other, face to face.
I have
It's a
a
manner
non
of communication.
I have a non sequitur story today. We were talking about how dogs. You're just mentioning how dogs do that. They like to smell the butts of whoever they're meeting. And we went to a brewery, and there was this. We took our dog Falcor, and there was a deer there, and it was half a deer, and the butt was cut off, and it was up against the wall, and it confused the heck out of Falcor because he wanted to smell the butt, and there's no butt there to smell.
Yeah, I can see why that would throw him off his game.
Yeah.
Was it a
What
white
is
deer?
this? Yeah.
Got a couple comments to read. Beamsy offers $10 Australian. It says, a beer to make up for the embarrassments of the chromosomes the other day. Not sure what that's relating to, but okay, thank you.
Beamsy, what did
And
you
then
do?
Frederick Agerbo says, Tomer, I honestly would love to see the spin-off stream. Tomer reads his commentary without interruptions. Yes, stream.
We need to make
Maybe
a
it could
super
be a
cut.
little dry, but I
Italy.
90.
No, I think it. The 9, maybe it's an error.
Okay,
But it
would be awesome. Tell Jimmy go fuck yourself. Jimmy's not on this show.
GF.
That's the Book of Mormon.
Yeah. Join the Milwaukee Atheist Discord channel, and you can join Tomer and me sometimes.
Me,
Oh,
me
Tomer's on there now
rambling.
too.
I
has
was
been,
there like a
yeah.
couple of months ago. So yeah.
Okay,
uh,
very
point
good.
in our favor.
So, shall we continue reading, or
No, I'm done.
Let us.
Ah, he's
What?
done.
No, that's for the for this part of the commentary. Yeah,
That was verse 11, yeah.
yeah. Verse 11.
Okay, and as.
Oh, actually, I
and
have
so-
one thing.
Okay.
So the last verse we just read, right? It says, Joshua, the son of Nun, the young man, as you read it. So
Mhm.
the word there is like youth, and
Na'al, yeah.
yeah, now it like means a youth. But like the commentators are like, he's supposed to be like, he's probably like 56 at this time, because if he died at 110, which was 12 years after they entered the land, because of 14 years, 7 years of conquering, 7 years, whatever, and this is a few years before that, then he's like 56 when they left Egypt. So what does it mean that he's a young man? He's a youth. Bit weird, but
Well-
they explain it as like he was.
It's almost
serving
like
Yeah,
all the
he's
numbers
4
in here
years
are
younger than
bullshit.
me.
Yeah, he's not
I
that
was
old.
a spry teenager at 56.
Yeah, I think it means that he's like
God,
a
I'm a
page,
baby.
like I don't know what the word is, like a deputy or whatever. Like
Arn,
Yeah, he's
BMC
right-hand
clarified
man.
what the beer was for, and I think this was on Ember stream. He made a joke. How do you embarrass a chromosome? You take down his genes.
Oh, yeah. It was when we were
Oh.
doing the interview show.
Okay.
We
Gotcha.
need to block BMC.
All right. So we did finish 33,
No,
No,
we didn't.
We're on verse 12.
wait, what did I
Yeah,
say?
verse 12.
verse 12.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's go then, I guess. And Moses said unto the Lord, See, thou sayest unto me, Bring up this people, and thou hast not let me know whom thou wilt send with me. Yet thou hast said, I know thee by name, and thou hast also found grace in my sight. Now therefore I pray thee, if I have found grace in thy sight, shew me now thy way, that I may know thee, that I may find grace in thy sight, and consider that this nation is thy people. And he said, My presence shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. And he said unto him, If thy presence go not with me, carry us not up hence. For wherein shall it be known here that I and thy people have found grace in thy sight? Is it not in that thou goest with us? Shall we be separated, I and thy people, from all the people that are upon the face of the earth? And the Lord said unto Moses, I will do this thing also that thou hast spoken, for thou hast found grace in my sight, and I know thee by name. So he changes his mind about them being stubborn and decides to go with them. And he said, I beseech thee, shew me thy glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before thee, and I will proclaim the name of the Lord before thee, and will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will shew mercy on whom I will shew mercy. And he said, Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live, except for when he was face to face a minute ago.
And all the 70 elders
Thought
of
we
Israel.
covered
And yeah.
And Adam and
Mhm.
Jacob.
And
Yeah.
shoot, that other one doesn't matter.
He's a pillar of
Yeah,
fire.
so for
Those-
those
No.
Wait.
keeping
Please,
track
Laser.
of the contradictions, just put a sticky note here.
Yeah, please
no
finish.
contradiction.
Okay, God shows Moses his back parts. Oh my goodness. And
Back parts, all of them?
God is a bottom confirmed.
And the Lord said,
Here's my right butt cheek. Here's my left butt cheek. I've been doing glutes exercises.
I did not think that was what was meant by turn the other cheek.
That's
but-
that's how Yahweh created the moon.
The other two.
and
Yeah,
the
and
Lord,
look how it looks when I shift my weight to this side.
oh my
Ah.
goodness. And the Lord said, Behold, there is a place by me, and thou shalt stand upon a rock, and shall come to pass while my glory passes by, that I will put thee in a cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass.
Wait, just when his glory passes by? What was the passage we just did we just read? Because I'm thinking we just read a passage where Moses said, "God, show me your glory," and God showed him his glory, and then Moses asked him to close his kilt again.
I guess
What-
maybe his butt is his glory.
He didn't show him his glory, but please please finish
very
this
thick.
chapter.
And it shall come to pass, while my glory passes by, I will put thee in a cleft of the rock, and will cover thee with my hand while I pass by. And I will
So
take
God has a hand and an ass.
Wait, please
and I
let
will
her finish.
take away mine hand, and thou shalt see my back parts.
Back
but my
part.
face shall not be seen.
Let's look that word up.
Well, what's it say in NIV? Is it back parts?
I like you reading
My
KJV,
back.
by the way.
My back.
Yeah, my back.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got backside somehow, but yeah.
I didn't. I'll get to that in my commentary, but in Hebrew it's achorai, which means hinder side or back part.
I don't know. I think it sounds really
My
dirty
back.
to say Hawaii, whatever the hell you just said.
Achorai.
I won't show you my glory, but you can.
I will show you my Hawaii. Whatever Tomer just said.
Yeah. Okay, verse 12. You have not let me know whom you will stand with me. Rashi and Rashbam comment that even though God sent him an angel, Moses is not satisfied with it. Nachmanides, however, rejects this because why would Moses have said this only now and not during when it was communicated to him? Instead, he writes that Moses said that he didn't know who is the angel that God's going to send and if it's the angel from 23:20. Verse 14, my presence will go with you. So Hebrew Bible literally reads, my face, panai, will go. Most commentators understood panai to mean myself, as seen in 2 Samuel 17:11, that you yourself, panecha, march into battle. Malul comments, for the meaning of the phrase walking face, especially in its military context, like in 2 Samuel 17:11, it should be compared to a few Akkadian phrases that are composed of the noun panu, face, and the verb alaku, to walk. Ina pani alaku means to lead. Therefore, alik pani, he who walks ahead, i.e. the leader. Moses asks God, therefore, that he himself will stand as the head of the camp and guide them to the promised land. Verse 16, prostitute themselves to their gods. Sana comments, the Hebrew stem zain nun hey, literally to engage in prostitution, is often used figuratively to express infidelity to the covenant with God. Its use here may allude to the sexual immorality often associated with pagan cults, and particularly with the popular excesses in connection with the golden calf, as mentioned in 32:6. The story about the apostasy at Baal Peor, as recounted in Numbers 25 verses 1 to 9, illustrates the pertinence of the admonitions listed in these verses.
Was that verse 16
16, yeah.
of 33?
Oh, sorry. I think I'm mistaken. That wasn't.
So what did I missed something?
Yeah.
terribly
Sorry.
important here.
Yeah.
My apologies. I've read Sana's commentary and I thought it was 33, but it's 34. I apologize sincerely.
Alright, that's next
Tomer got ahead of
chapter.
himself.
Yeah.
but-
No. I
Okay.
just mistaken because I literally read this in the.
So it's next
last minute.
chapter that people are
next
sticking their
chapter.
head in
I'm
God's
sorry,
window
I'm
saying,
sorry. You can all curse me in the comments later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
"Hey,
The
hey God,
the
you shall I?"
prostitution will be in the next episode. Not
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this
yeah.
episode,
Right.
next.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like
Okay.
your rod and your staff to guide me? Gotcha.
Okay, verse 18. Now show me your glory. Maimonides writes that Moses asks for an intellectual perception of God, as we've already discussed in Exodus
Yeah,
24:10.
sure. That's how I describe it too.
Rashbam comments that Moses asked to create a covenant of the two things which God agreed on, to distinguish him individually and to personally travel with the people. Prop comments, although the Hebrew noun kavod is the same, this may not be quite the same as peace kavod, the supernatural fire that conceals Yahweh, that frequently appears to all Israel and so would not be a special favor. Exodus 16:7 and 8. Exodus 16 verses 7 and 10, 24:17, and Leviticus 9 verses 3 and 23, etc. Probably Moses is asking to see Yahweh in his kingly splendor to demonstrate that God will guide Israel. Alternatively, kavod may just mean self, as apparently in Genesis 49:6, may my soul not enter thy council, may my glory not consort with their assembly. Compare also Rashi and Ibn Ezra. Overall, Kasuto is probably correct. Said of Yahweh, kavod essentially means theophany.
The there's a note here in the Skeptics Annotated Bible that the word for glory in Hebrew is kabod.
Kavod, yes.
Yes, and sometimes kabod can be translated as liver, and sometimes idiomatically to refer to the male reproductive organ.
Which explains glory holes.
Well, the liver in Hebrew is liver in Hebrew is kaved, so it depends on the vocalization.
But it's the same letters, right?
Yeah, it is the same letters, but I don't think that he wanted to see his liver.
Well, not likely.
liver.
Well,
there is
last time
I
we were
think there
talking
are
about
some-
different bodily
Yeah.
organs
Yeah, but-
being the seat of emotions and feeling and so
I mean, come
forth.
on, I got to see your back parts. Let me see your
and-
glory.
And the whole bile thing, that's one of the four humors, right? It's very
Yeah.
important for emotions.
It's how it's all in the spelling. So, you don't like when you see those girls on
spelling.
Instagram going, "Oh, the smell of his colon."
Yes.
Okay.
Instead of
Did you say
cologne.
colon?
He said colon. That English
That's what I'm
accent,
saying.
I
It's
don't
all in
know.
the spelling.
Okay. Verse 22. Cover you with my hand. Hebrew for my hand is kapai. Kapi. While the Septuagint, Vulgate, Peshitta, and Ibn Ezra render it my hand, the Targums translate my word. Some, like Saadia Gaon, Bechosho, and Sana, render my cloud, based on verses where the word kaf is connoted with a cloud. 1 Kings 18:44, Job 36:32, Lamentations 3:41, etc. Malul suggested that kapi is an assimilation of knafi, wing or skirt, for several reasons. For example, the Akkadian cognate kapu means hand or wing, and the Septuagint, Vitus Latina, and Peshitta translate kanafaich, your garments, in Jeremiah 2:34 as kapaich, your hands. Sorry, your hands.
This specific word for hand is more the palm of the hand, right?
Kapi, yeah, the palm.
As opposed
It's
to
a
yad.
So
yad,
talk
yeah.
to the hand.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
But remember, God is a spirit, and no man has ever seen God. God is just a spiritual being. He doesn't have a body, so he doesn't have a butt. He doesn't have a backside. He doesn't have a hand. He says, no man can see my face because he doesn't have a face, but he can hide his face with his hand.
The way this story reads to me, Moses is like, "Oh, please, let me see your glory, God," and God shows him his backside.
Yeah.
Well, we keep our glories in different places.
He actually
he's
doesn't
proud
really.
of that badonkadonk. That's
Yeah,
his glory.
Yeah.
Still
verse
probably
20
not as good.
There
as,
is a
Sorry.
there
that
there
one.
is a tradition here where and Francesca Stavrokopoulou takes this track where this is actually a sign of a sign of disrespect or shame for Moses to shield, or sorry, for God to shield Moses and to turn his backside to him.
Yeah, I have a
That-
comment on this as well.
It
So-
reminds me of
sorry.
the Holy Grail, where they're going up to the castle to look for the Holy Grail, and the French are there, and the French. I'm reading this. I don't want to talk to you anymore, you empty-headed trough whopper. I fart in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster and father
And your
smelled of
father
elderberries.
smelled of elderberries.
Yeah.
Now leave this place or I shall taunt you a second time.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's like, could I just see you? No, you can see my butt. You know?
And talk to the hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, so I'll just finish this part. Rashi, based on Talmud Berachot 7a, writes that he showed him the tefillin knot, which is placed behind the head. Sforno comments that
I
God
was
tells
gonna bring-
Moses,
yeah.
yeah, you shall see how all the things below me work. Prop comments, this
Wait.
story
What?
You will see how all the things below me work.
Giggity.
These
Meaning
these
the earth,
Jewish
you know.
commentators are just gonna kill me.
Okay, prop comments. This story qualifies others, indicating that Moses obtained a full frontal view of God. 24:11, 33:11, Numbers 12:8. In this vignette, the divine face may not be experienced. The fullest vision flesh and blood can sustain is of the divine back, still part of God's essence, but a side less fraught with his dangerous aura than his face or front side. The context suggests that Yahweh's face is constituted by his attributes of mercy and punishment, through which he interacts with humanity. 34 verses 6 to 7. Bechol Shor compares the sun. While one cannot look it in the face, one may comfortably admire its afterglow.
Okay.
And so, if you get the full frontal thing with God and you're not allowed to see his face, but you do see his glory, I'm wondering, is there a choir of angels that go, ah?
Angels actually
Why
don't
am I
sing in the
envisioning?
Bible.
Why am I envisioning
Random
God wearing a
fact.
trench coat?
Behold my glory.
Hey,
Note
my
how
eyes
my
are up
kilt
here.
tilts.
Well, and I do love how you can't see the glory of God or you'll be destroyed is very reminiscent of the story of Semele and Zeus and the birth of Dionysus, where she is having an affair with Zeus and Hera tricks her into, oh, promise me you'll give me one thing I ask. And then once he's bound himself with an oath, I want to see you as you really are. And then, of course, as a mortal, she's consumed. It's exactly the same thing here. If you read ahead a little bit, they also establish that this radiance passes on to Moses in the next chapter. We'll get into that in a bit of detail, but it's, they're focusing on this vast supernatural power that you just can't handle it, man. You just can't handle the truth.
But here's the thing: when King Arjuna was blessed to see Lord Krishna in his full divine form, I mean, yeah, it was overwhelming and all in his multi-armed form, where he's gigantic and has all these different faces and all these different aspects. But Krishna gave Arjuna the ability to survive that.
Yes.
Because gods can do that, but in the Bible, it specifies. I forget where it was. It was one of the recent chapters we just read, where God specifies that he has to remember to kill the person who got to see him. So it doesn't happen automatically. God has to remember to kill that guy, instead of where Krishna grants the ability to survive seeing him in the full divine form.
I think in part it's one more testimony to how many authors are part of this soup.
There's
Too many
no
cooks in the kitchen.
continuity.
There is no continuity. Absolutely. You can see God. You can't see God. You can see God under very special conditions. We already touched on the 70 elders of Israel. So there again, but if you look at it from the perspective of political goals and ideological goals, you can see that the specialness of Moses versus, at the one point, the 70 elders can all see God's glory. So they are also anointed. Maybe they aren't the leader Moses is, but there's, I guess more a more democratic spread of power, if you will, whereas this is more focused on this is my one prophet and, frankly, more culty. But also, it's you see this in religion all the time, arguing for your, the strength of your ideological lineage, whether it's the, divine hands, with all the Catholic Church, they have the direct line of hands of men touching all the way from Jesus. granting divine authority in that way, or if it's the Muslims where you can, if you pay the right imams, you can claim descent directly from Muhammad, and then you can wear the black turban instead of the white turban.
Ooh.
It's fancy. But it's this idea of establishing a lineage, whether physically through bloodlines, line of David, line of Moses and Aaron and the Levites, or through like an ideological heritage, it's always been a power play going on in religion for always and ever. And it's also one of the ways in which we can see, as I was pointing out earlier, the difference between the focus on Joshua as Moses' right-hand man and the focus on Aaron as Moses' right-hand man, as the high priest. Those are not found in the same sections. Those are not found with the same authors. You can see there's a push-pull between, it's like the Sunni versus the Shia Muslims, who was supposed to be the inheritor of Muhammad's, direct to the next in line. It was supposed to be this guy. No, it was supposed to be the other guy, yada, yada, yada. So very similar vibe there.
I got to share this. I mean, somebody criticized me late last night. I got some comment from somebody watching one of my older videos who was saying that this guy obviously hasn't read the Bible. And the reason, his only justification for it was that I could not have read the Bible because I don't believe it.
That's a win for sure.
I would reverse that. The reason why they still believe it is because they haven't read the Bible.
Yeah.
More often that is the case, yes.
Ingersoll said, if you must believe the Bible, for goodness sake, don't read it. Just swear you believe whatever's in it. And when you get to the gates of heaven, you just say, yes, of course I do. Absolutely. I have no idea what it is, but I believe it all.
All right. Where are we now in the verses?
Chapter 34, actually.
Yes.
Are
do
we?
you wanna-
Are we? I
Yes.
want to read this one.
Chapter
do you wanna read the
Before we go
comments?
there, I just want to say, from a Christian perspective, I think that the rock here, again, is just a symbol of Christ in some way.
Of course you do.
That's from a Christian perspective.
Of course, everything that
also-
isn't Christian is
Wh-
Christian. Got
He's
it.
setting up this
Peter?
whole. They're gonna march around the wilderness.
Wait, so what's the
with the
cleft in the
tabernacle.
rock?
The crack in
What does the
Peter's
cleft
face.
The part that you can see through, where God's gonna cover up with His hand, right? As he
And what
walks
has that
out,
got
cover
to
his
do with a
face.
character that hasn't even been invented yet?
I think there's a different cleft of a rock that he strikes to get water, and Jesus once said he was the living water. So,
Right.
magic.
I'm making the connection. There's
yeah,
another
again,
example.
if you're
Or
going to have analogies
Yeah.
to such ambiguous things, you can
Yeah.
make up whatever you want. But honestly, I've heard pastors give lectures on things like that, and they had a lot more depth to their analysis than you're bringing.
Yeah,
So,
I suggest that before you go, if this is your manner of thinking, that before you do much more Bible study, you should go read it. You should go watch A Beautiful Mind.
mm,
when I was reading the part when Moses was asking God who the messenger is, I was like, P-Town's gonna say Jesus. That he's sending Jesus.
as the angel. Ah,
No.
But for me, it feels like that on some level, P-Town, you must know how silly this all sounds, and you sound bored with it, and you want to get to the part about Jesus.
Well, it's not entirely true, but it is a little awkward since I'm not a blasphemer on the Blasphemers Bible study. But I want to. It's ironic. I want to be courteous, but
Well,
if
you're on the wrong show.
blaspheming-
Well, there's still hope for you,
Right.
P-Town. You
So-
may learn to blasphemy with the rest of us.
But yeah, I agree with you that it is all hard to.
All right, I have
takes
to
like
read
work
some
to
of these
get through it.
comments. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're fine.
I would have to read some of these comments. Eric Wander, failing to destroy the nations is a false prophecy, or can be seen as a metaphor that those nations will have less power. The Bible still claims that it was fulfilled.
are we talking about Tyre? Because Google Maps.
Yeah. And then Eric Wander gifted 1 RN Raw membership. And Aunt Jer says, so God crop dusted Moses and claimed it was his glory. Is this the first don't piss on me and tell me it's raining?
you, Ed Chair. I love you so much.
Then Kyle Johnson offers $5 with no message. Thank you very much for that. And then Godless Granny said, God mooned Moses? Yes, God mooned Moses.
The sun was too much glory.
And Moses
Yeah.
liked it.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The
Moon
glory
Man
was all over
gentleman.
his face after that.
Oh
He
no! Oh
was
no!
glowing.
All right, now I'm going to
Read about
read
it.
Exodus
Oh.
34.
Yeah, read up to 28.
Okay. The Lord said to Moses, chisel out 2 stones, 2 stone tablets like the first one, and I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets, which you broke. Be ready in the morning, and then come up on Mount Sinai. Present yourself to me there on the top of the mountain. No one is to come with you or be seen anywhere on the mountain, not even in the flocks and herds that may graze on the front of the mountain, because everything has to be done in secret. So Moses chiseled out 2 stone tablets like the first ones and went up the Mount Sinai early in the morning, because God couldn't chisel stone tablets.
He totes did for real on the last one, but those got smashed, and whoopsies.
Yep. So he went up to Mount Sinai in the morning as the Lord commanded him, and he carried the 2 stone tablets in his hand. Then the Lord came down in a cloud and stood there with him and proclaimed his name, the Lord. And he passed the front of Moses, proclaiming, the Lord, and the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generation, because he is not a righteous judge. Moses bowed to the ground at once and worshipped. Lord, he said, if I have found favor in your eyes, then let the Lord go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, you have to specify they're stiff-necked people. Forgive our wickedness and our sin, and take us as your inheritance. Then the Lord said, I am making a covenant with you. Before all your people, I will do wonders never before done in any nation and in all the world. The people you live among will see how awesome is the work that I, the Lord, will do for you. Obey what I command you today, and I will drive out before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hevites, Jebusites, and Chigarites. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land where you are going, as they will be a snare among you. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and cut down their Asherah poles, because I hate that woman ever since our divorce. It was bad. Do not worship any other god, for the Lord whose name is jealous, a jealous God. Be careful not to make a treaty with those who live in the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to them, they will invite you, and you will eat their sacrifices. And when you choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons, and those daughters prostitute themselves to their gods, they will lead your sons to do the same. Do not make any idols. I've told you this and told you this. Celebrate the festival of the unleavened bread for 7 days. Eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Aviv, for in that month you came out of Egypt. The first offering of every womb belongs to me, including all the firstborn males of your livestock, whether from herd or from flock. Redeem the firstborn donkey with a lamb, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem all your firstborn sons. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you shall labor, but on the 7th day you shall rest. Even during the plowing season and harvest, you must rest. Celebrate the festival of weeks with the first fruits of the wheat harvest, and the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year. 3 times a year, All your men are to appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel, and I will drive out all the nations before you and enlarge your territory, and no one will covet your land when you go up 3 times each year to appear before the Lord your God. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me along with anything containing yeast. I'm
God is
intolerant.
jealous that yeast makes things rise, right?
Yep. I have to have a strictly gluten-free blood diet. And do
Oh
not
my
let
God, he
any of
was
the
paleo.
and do not let any of the sacrifice from the Passover festival remain until morning, because that shit goes bad quick. And you don't want to smell it in the morning. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God and give it to your priest, because it's for me, but I mean, we know they're eating it. Most importantly, can't stress this enough, do not cook a young goat in its own mother's milk, because that would be creepy. Then the Lord said to Moses, write down these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. Moses was there with the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights, without eating bread or drinking water, and he wrote on the tablets of the covenant the 10 commandments. Now,
So these are the actual 10 commandments.
these are the
According to
actual
the
10
text.
commandments. And there's a couple of small contradictions here. And maybe Dr. Kip can clarify, because I got that God said that this time, remember last time God wrote the 10 commandments? But now it says that this time I'm going to write the 10 commandments instead of you. So God is saying that Moses wrote them last time. It says last time in Exodus 20, it said that God wrote them. But here in Exodus 34, it says that this time God is going to write them. But then later in the same chapter, we find out that God isn't writing them, that Moses is writing them. It takes him 40 days to write those that
Lot of
God wrote.
chiseling.
And God said that they're going to be the same words that were on the previous set, only they're almost
Not
entirely
even-
different.
The
Do
Torah
you
The
is not
first
chronologically
two
ordered.
are sort of there, they're paraphrased, but everything else is completely different.
They don't even have the do not murder bit. That was a good one.
That's
Well,
why
that
murder
one.
happens so much later, because that commandment got erased. But I wonder if this is a Joseph Smith type situation where the papers got lost, so he had to recreate the papers, but they're not quite the same.
Well,
Because God is angry at me, so we can't recreate it.
well, medieval commentators already said that. Well, the Torah is not chronologically ordered, so it's not a real problem.
I have to know what Kip is thinking, because I see his head in his hands.
No, I was just going to say this is one of the ways in which clever, not so clever editors of these texts would attempt to put things together. When you have multiple copies of the same story, but you want to keep both of them as closely intact as possible, you end up repeating yourselves, but then also introducing differences to those repetitions. So
Slight variations, yeah.
yeah, and you need to fill it in with transitions that are going to help make sense of why you're repeating yourself, and hopefully
And-
nobody will notice that it's different the second time around.
What would you be? What is your professional opinion on Exodus 20 saying that God wrote them, and then we find out now that it wasn't God that wrote them then, but God's going to write them now, and then we find out later in the same chapter that God didn't write them now either. God just said He was going to write them, but that it was actually Moses writing it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to take a closer look at the
I will just
at the
interject.
way the stuff is structured. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just interject that I do have Prop. I know that Prop disagrees, but essentially many people believe that the Ten Commandments refer to the Ten Commandments that are here, that they are also known as the Ritual Decalogue. But Prop is, I think, in the minority opinion that it's not, and it basically refers to the the 10 commandments that were in Exodus 20, but I'll get to that. But from what I've read, most scholars think that this is referring to this chapter.
The Ten
And-
Commandments.
Yep.
Yes.
Even
Yeah.
though there's like 13 or 14 of them, but I think the giant golden calf in the room is when it says you have to redeem stuff or break its neck, bring me all your firstborn children.
Well, it's not really bring me. It's the word is different. It's not saying bring, but it's where was it? It's verse 20. It says tifde, which doesn't mean tavi or ten. It's you could say it's like ransomed or redeemed, as JPS says. Ransom according to BDB dictionary, but JPS also translates "you shall not redeem it." You must redeem every firstborn. So it doesn't really say you must bring them.
Yeah,
It's
I took it to
interesting, it's
mean
like- sorry,
in
go ahead.
I took it to mean in this verse, but there's verses that contradict this one. That every firstborn male, even your own sons, belong to me, and you have to redeem them with a lamb.
It's like
Sacrifice.
holding your firstborn son hostage, and
Yeah.
if you have to redeem them, to keep them, you have to redeem them and give the priest something.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. So
if
this
you
is
don't-
this is that embarrassing situation where the father has to go before God and like, oh, that was today. Damn. I mean, I had the lamb, but we had veal last night, and my bad.
Whoopsie.
I'm an ex-Christian, so I feel like redeeming with a lamb. I'm surprised P-Town didn't hop on that.
I think it's
Well,
the
and-
lamb
Do I
is for
have
the
to?
donkey. The
There
lamb
there is the lamb is for the donkey, but a donkey can
Oh.
be used to redeem a firstborn son.
Yeah.
So
I-
it's
no,
not.
I
or
think a
or
firstborn
shekels
son-
or with shekels.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
it's money. I think with
money.
the firstborn son,
Yeah,
it's like
it's
five.
financial value. Yeah.
So,
It might
be
so
money
it's
now,
actually an
but-
extortion scheme,
Yeah.
just with the threat of human sacrifice underneath it.
Sounds like
Okay,
it,
I
at
mean-
least at some points.
I think
in
Dr.
history.
Sorry.
Dr. Kip, I think you mentioned when we brought this up last time that there was something about human sacrifice in here.
Yeah, I think he said that there were some cults, but that wasn't really prevalent.
Well,
Well-
remember, when you're dealing with a god can also curse you. Like you, if you don't redeem your firstborn, then maybe all your next children will be born sick or deformed, or they'll die or something. So you want to toe the line.
Yeah, I just
We-
my hang up is that it says redeem all your firstborn sons, etc., etc. But the way that some of this is so random, like do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk, is
It's basically a
directly
repetition of the
after.
previous laws.
Yeah,
But it's
that
not.
passage is right after the thing about the first fruits of the soil. Like some of the shit, it's like they took the rules, shuffled them, and then just peeled them out randomly. So it isn't necessarily a given that just because that one sentence about the firstborn son seems to go with the thing about sacrificing donkeys and lambs, doesn't mean it necessarily does.
Kip.
Yep.
Last time I remember, you mentioned that when they specified that that the young child can be with the mother for 7 days, but you give him to me on the 8th day,
Yeah.
and there was no way that an 8-day-old baby, is going to survive when taken away from the mother.
Yep.
Was
I
that
thought
about
the
humans,
eighth
or that
day was the day
that
of
was about the
circumcision.
animals? Yes,
Oh,
that's
it's-
true.
When it comes to the ass, from my perspective, is like a typology of the natural man. Like the person who believes in evolution,
Oh, of course.
as an example.
The normal person.
And then in this case, a lamb is the redemption for the natural man, the ass. That's what I see.
So starving an 8-year-old baby or an 8-day-old baby is somehow like believing in demonstrable science.
I don't know where you're coming up with the starving an 8-year-old baby.
What happens to an
Talking about verse
8-day-old
20.
baby when you take it away from its mother?
It would probably die.
Mhm.
Of what?
Starvation.
And
There you
thirst.
go. And you equated
But I
that
don't know. I
somehow
don't see that
to
in 20. I don't
believing
see that.
in evolution.
I don't see that in verse 20. Art. I don't know what you're referring to.
Oh,
chapter
It's
22.
not in verse 20. It was in the previous chapter that we were talking about before, when Kip brought up before that they're definitely talking about when he said that they're not consigning of their children to the priesthood, because if you take the child away from the mother on its 8th day alive, it's not going to the priesthood, it's going to die.
Yeah, but those are those are
There
about
is
animals.
then that is the
I
day
just-
where the
It did say
circumcision
man.
No,
happens.
it's all of them.
I just want to say real quick, I'm seeing the comments
Oh.
piling up, so make it short, please.
It did say man and beast, though, not just animals, Isaac.
Yep.
That
Yeah,
chapter.
and
for
if you redeem the son via a sacrifice and possibly also circumcision, which sacrificing a part of the child rather than the whole child, and of course mutilating genitals and destroying sexual pleasure as
Circumcision
well,
is for all
because,
of
yay.
them males. So-
Then it's but it's also on the 8th day specifically, which actually I don't think we've mentioned that so far. Or maybe no, it'll come later. But they make a point to say to do that on the 8th day, and that's also often when you'll offer the redeeming sacrifice. And in another verse, I think it's Leviticus or Deuteronomy, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they talk about various animals that you can redeem your child with, your firstborn son with, and if you can't afford this, you can have that, and if you
That
can't
is
afford
Leviticus,
this,
I'm
you
pretty
can.
sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Leviticus, which is what Jesus in the Luke version of his birth is redeemed with a pair of, I believe, turtle doves, which is like the poor. Like if you can't afford anything better, you can just get a pair of turtle doves, and that's good enough to redeem your child.
And
Right,
could it be that maybe it isn't a contradiction? Maybe child sacrifice was there, and this is the way later to where people stop doing that. They can offer turtle doves or lambs or whatever instead to mollify God.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be something
Yeah.
that changed.
It's
whether it was
a Godfather kind of thing. That's a lovely firstborn you have there. It'd be a real shame if something happened to it.
All right, I'm going to read some comments here. Nick Vanderhayden says, "It is so strange to read that God is all good, but then also read about so many evil things in the Bible. So many fucking contradictions. Excuse my French, because I'm Dutch." Well, yeah, the Jewish version of God was very different than the Christian revision of God. The Jewish version of God was good and evil. And then the Christian version, they have Jesus juxtaposed against an opposite character, a yin and yang kind of transition, where you pit Jesus against Satan. So then Vesta Freya says, it took Moses to write the 10 Commandments. Perhaps Yahweh has a stutter or speech impediment.
That would explain why there's so many repetitions.
Yeah, that would too. Yeah.
And
Maybe God
Mr.
has to do that.
Crennan, Mr. Crennan says, so while the Hebrews claimed that Yahweh's covenant did away with the child sacrifices, it actually didn't, and only very gradually turned away from baby sacrifices. Yeah, sort of. So, because we still got the human sacrifices, actually more explicitly this time.
It's one of those things that clearly they moved away from at some point, and it's difficult to tell, but there's still remnants in the text that show that this was a practice, at least at some point. And I mean, otherwise, why would they need to substitute for it? But yeah.
And if there's any question about it, I mean, the whole thing started with Abraham. He's got a very familiar story about this. So then
Yes.
Stuart Motari says, God told Abraham he would have many descendants. Is this a parallel to 50% of the population being under Abrahamic religions? It's something that I can't seem to get around. I'm atheist. 50% of the population, if you're talking about a global population, that it's not 50, I don't think it's 50% of the population being under Abrahamic religions. I think still the majority are not. Between, let's say, India and China alone, those are not Abrahamic, either of them. And I
No,
think
they
those
have
two,
some people.
yeah,
that
I
are.
think Well, no, wait. Take that back because I've seen the world statistics on it, and it's roughly 2/3 of the planet is, if I remember correctly, it's roughly we're in world religions. 2/3 of the planet is under Christianity or Islam.
Of those who are religious, perhaps, but total census numbers puts Christianity at about 1.6 billion and Islam at about 1.2, and Judaism doesn't make the top 10.
Yeah.
No, Judaism is
Judaism
much
is
smaller.
like
20
Judaism
million
is like
around.
15 million, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and even Christianity
just have
is, I think Christianity and Islam in some areas are largely cultural. You know, the Dutch are mostly atheists, but a lot of them still belong to a church and in this sort of an official capacity. And that's where you get your, you know, your weddings and shit done. And, you know, it's sort of an old cultural thing. It's not that they actually believe in God. It's just kind of,
Yeah, similar thing in most of the non-Bible Belt part of the U.S. Most people are Christians by tradition rather than actual emotional investment.
Yeah, I think
Well-
it matters to people like if they were born into a Lutheran family, they identify as Lutheran, and it doesn't mean any more than when you describe that, well, because I was born in mid-October, that makes me a Libra.
well,
when-
an Irish person, for example, could be a Catholic atheist because there's a long history of, you know,
I've been to Ireland. I've heard this
Identification.
many times.
yeah, I know, I know, but like there's a long history of social identification with political movements and your family and your history. You don't actually have to believe in God for any of that to be really, really freaking important to you.
Well, I looked this up. So when it comes to descendants, I think it's like 35% of males are circumcised around the world. I think in the United States it's like 60. So
I haven't seen data
for what
on
it's
that,
worth,
but
What's
I don't know where they get the data from, but
yeah,
what's that got to do with being a descendant?
typically dads want their little boys to have similar looking wee-wee, I can imagine. So I think
Yeah.
it's a
Again,
good way to
what does
track
that
Okay, I
have to
think
do
we're
with being a
diverging
That's
too
kind
much
of sick,
on this
but
subject.
what?
Well, the question was, I thought his question was, talking about the percent, how many, the
How
percentage
many
of
descendants of Abraham are there in the
Right.
world?
I think it's a good way to track it if you're able to
yeah,
calculate.
there's
So
lots
all the
of other-
Muslims are descendants of Abraham, and only some Christians.
The Muslims are descendants of Abraham too.
But you could say the Arabs are, according to
Maybe.
tradition.
Oh, I guess it
Spiritual
wouldn't be. I
descendants.
see what you're saying. It wouldn't be. Yeah. But in terms of spiritually descendant, yeah. I see
Yeah,
your
I'm pretty
point.
sure
Never mind.
Abraham thought he was talking about actual kids.
Okay, I'll start my commentary.
don't-
So uh, okay, before I'll start, I've noticed that, or you noticed maybe that there wasn't a lot of even as of savagery in the in the previous chapters. So now in this
Like-
chapter, I found 3 even as of savageries. So to
Cool.
compensate on the lack of savageries before. So the first is in this verse. So Savage Ibn Ezra 1. Sa'ad Gaon says that the second tablets were more precious than the first. There is no need to answer the Gaon on this point, for his proofs are like a dream, neither adding nor subtracting. His mouth spouts arrogance, and anyone who says this should be flogged. Yes.
And Sajjah Gaon is considered like a bit like quite a important.
Yeah,
Jewish commentator as well.
it's considered important, but and even as well sometimes went on to his defense, but sometimes he goes hard even on his even
word
with these
Gaon.
people, yeah.
The word Gaon means genius.
It's a modern like rendition.
Yeah.
Gaon is just like a period. Yeah. Okay.
Whatever,
Verse
a
5.
sage.
Yeah. Verse 5. It is not clear if the subject of the verbs stood and proclaimed is either God, based on verse 2 and 33:21, like the Vulgate and Tagub Pseudo Jonathan suggest, or God, based on 33:19, as Ibn Ezra, Nachmanides, and Rashbam suggest. Verses 6 to 7. These 2 verses are known in Jewish tradition as the 13 attributes of mercy, in Hebrew, 13 midot, and it is frequently used in Jewish liturgy. Maimonides, in Guide 154, says that these are not really attributes that are inherent of God, but are the actions of his activity. Prop suggested that verses 6 to 7 are the full name of God.
It does say
Verse-
he gave Moses his full name, which rabbinically is often thought to contain magic. So,
And
Verse
it's jealous.
10. Sorry. Verse 10, wonders. Rashi and Rashbam note that the word for wonders, niflaot, is similar in meaning to distinguished, niflinu, in Exodus 33:16, meaning that unlike the other people, his divine presence shall reside on his people. Ibn Ezra and Bechor Shor interpret the wonders as referring to the radiant face of Moses, as we'll see in verse 29. Kasuto writes that the wonders are the miraculous events that will happen during the wilderness and the occupation of the land. Verse 13, Asherah poles, in Hebrew, Asherav. KJV translates to groves. I don't know what this means. Sana comments, Hebrew Asherim, singular Asherah, are pagan cultic objects often mentioned in the Bible. They derive their name from the goddess known in Babylon as Ashrat, consort of the god Amu. She bears the titles Bride of the King of Heaven and Mistress of Sexual Vigor and Rejoicing. In Ugarit, she appears as Athirat, consort of Il, who was head of its pantheon, and she is termed the progenitrix of the gods, mother of the gods, and Lady Athirat of the sea. She was a fertility goddess, and in 2 Kings 23:7, she is associated with sacred prostitution. That text testifies to the assimilation to Canaanite culture on the part of a segment of the Israelite population, a reality demonstrated by an inscription from Kuntilat Ajhud in the northwestern Sinai that mentions Yahweh and his Asherah, end quote. And Septuagint adds, and the cast images of their gods you shall burn with fire.
yeah, this is again in some version at some point, Asherah was the wife of Yahweh, and also sort of again that you get the crossover with attributes of El and everything, but yeah, they were a power couple, and again, the worship via shrine prostitutes was a thing, both male and female, and often disturbingly quite young in certain areas. So that sex has been a part of worship in a lot of human history. It's interesting. It's a little bit disturbing at times, but it's there, and you can see it in the text, and there's a rejection of it here, obviously, and in many other places.
It's kind of a form of ritual magic, blood magic, sex magic, and so it's in a lot of religious rituals.
I feel like Christianity threw over the sex magic for the blood magic, and I don't think they made the right choice.
It seems so. Do you suppose the iconoclasm, the destroy all gods, the bitterness, the jealousy, that might be because of the breakup?
Yeah, but
God needs Tinder.
It seems that Yahweh would have like inherited Asherah from El, since in the Ugarit, its Il consort is Atharat. So seems it wasn't such a long relationship.
I thought that too, but that was a very early inscription in the little. It was a rolled up piece of silver, like a little.
Ooh.
Similar, I think, to the scripts that they have in the little that Jews now put in their doorways, in the little
mezuzah.
Box or in the box.
Yeah.
That's
parchment.
mezuzah, etc.
Yeah, that's parchment.
Those
that's
use
parchment,
parchment, yeah.
and it says something very different. But it's similar in that it's this tiny rolled up insignia of a prayer that is worn.
I think that's a
or
quotation from
used in
Deuteronomy. They use the Shema Israel. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, the Shema Israel Adonai Elohim Elohim Echad. Yeah. But that's later.
Yes.
But with the Yahweh and his Asherah, that it only makes it clearer why, particularly Yahwist sources, really, really wanted to make a point of how Asherah is not part of us. She's part of those dirty, filthy, Canaanite, perverted, pagan, evil, bastard idol worshippers, bastards, and you should burn everything. But the lady doth protest too much, methinks. You know, the protestation itself tells you there's a reason they're making such a big deal.
It does seem also, I mean, I don't know if maybe this is from the Bible or we have archaeological proof as well, that the Asherah was kind of, I guess, developed from being a goddess into kind of being like an actual ritual object, as in the tree, the grove, or the terebinth, or even
I
a
mean,
pole, like
I've
a
heard of
maypole.
sacred groves and sacred trees representative of gods in all kinds of cultures. Your Babylonian and your Sumerian. There's stories with trees, obviously influence the Eden stories, but also, I mean, even in the Germanic countries, you know, Thor, and they'd have a tree sacred to Thor. Or a sacred grove where you would go and perform certain rituals.
Yeah, there's still a town in Wales where they have a sacred tree. It was a so-called Merlin's tree, and as long as the tree stood, the city would be protected. And the tree died like 1,300 years ago, but they built an artificial structure to keep it upright, so that the town would be protected.
Yep.
That's awesome. Who do we have here, Danger Noodle?
Oh, this is my Russian rat snake. She's she's less than a year old. I need to. I can't remember her birth date right now, but she's less than a year old. She will turn. Her coloration is going to change significantly. The gray parts or the slightly brownish parts are going to turn high yellow, and the dark gray parts are going to become blue black. So when she gets a little bit older, she's going to be gorgeous.
She's just a
And
baby.
Yep. Hopefully, she'll be a lot bigger too.
Speaking of like the custom with the trees, when we were talking about trees and Asherah worship, Jeremiah 10 says, "Thou saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain, for one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are not as upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They needs be born because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil. Neither also it is them to do good. For as much as there is none like unto thee, O Lord, thou shalt great, and thy name is great in might." So
Sounds
it
like
seems
cultural
like-
Christians.
no, this is
The
they're
general
they're-
idol worship.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they're identifying this practice as heathen, bringing in a tree and decking it out with gold and silver, and that.
Now you said Jeremiah 10, right?
Yes, yes,
Kind of what we do every December, isn't it?
it is. And
Precisely.
there was a time when before Dickens, when people didn't put up Christmas trees because they thought they were pagan, and maybe this verse as well. And they
It
are
is a
pagan
pagan,
practice.
really. It is a pagan
But
holiday.
it sounds more like Jeremiah is denouncing idols, as in forms of gods that are made of, wood. They're made of stone. They're made of gold. They don't move. There's nothing to be afraid of.
And they're
rather than-
powerless. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
He's
just a rock.
emphasizing the way that they're made, not necessarily talking about wooden.
Yeah, but it
poles
does.
covered
It
in
does
gold.
specify that it cut these
But,
trees down. They fix them onto a wooden support. They bring them into their house and cover them in decorations.
Yeah.
Ornaments.
Then they go
on it.
to
Like that.
then they go to the
Yeah.
store and they get lights. And
Yeah.
If I can spam a little,
Sorry.
Arn, Professor Francesca Stavrokopoulou did a great documentary on Asherah, and it's available on
Oh,
Daily Motion. I'm putting the link in the chat.
Thank you. I'd be happy to see
Peter,
that.
you send that to me on Twitter. I want that.
Yeah, will do.
All right.
Okay, so I'll continue my commentary. Verse 14. Any other god. Hebrew Bible reads El Acher with an enlarged R in Acher to avoid confusing it with the letter Daled, which would read Echad, one, i.e. one god. A similar thing happens in Deuteronomy 6:4, only this time the reverse happens. The Daled is enlarged. Verse 15.
I always wondered about the dollars.
Yeah. Verse 15.
Thank
They
you, that's a
prostitute
Dr. Kit.
themselves. They prostitute themselves to their gods. So I've already accidentally commented on this part, but it was Sarna. who I read, but here I have props. So first of all, Hebrew for prostitute is zanu from the root zain nun he, which means to engage in prostitution. Prop comments: many biblical authors possess a characteristic mindset by which religious infidelity is associated with sexual impropriety on two levels. As Israel's husband, quote unquote, especially in Hosea 1 to 3, Yahweh cannot tolerate her dalliance with other gods. Simultaneously, individual Israelites must not have marital relations with Canaanites, which might lead to familiar and national apostasy. The classic case is Solomon, whose connections with foreign women supposedly led to Israel's first national catastrophe, the division of the kingdom in 1 Kings 11. The Torah admonishes against whoring, quote unquote, in a religious sense in Leviticus 17:7 and 20 verses 5 to 6, Numbers 14:33 and 15:39, and Deuteronomy 31:16.
Like I said, there's that connection between sex and religion again, and also I am not the only one who thinks of like the really nasty abusive boyfriend in the group who's like, what, you're gonna go out like that dressed like a fucking whore? You gonna whore yourself? Are you a whore? And then that guy gets dumped and then he cries about how women don't date nice guys.
Well,
And
it
then he
seems like the
becomes an
religious-
incel killer at the mall.
Yeah,
So
Pretty
God,
typically.
God is an incel. That actually
seems
kind of
like reli-
tracks.
that makes
It
a
seems
lot of
that
sense.
It seems like religious people like asking their sky daddy to call them dirty whore.
I mean, you can't fairly accuse God of being an incel. I mean, there was that one 14-year-old he knocked up.
With questionable consent.
Yeah, if you're 14, there's no consent. Yeah, if you're
Well, was that Isaac? You're referring to?
No, he's talking about Mary.
Oh, okay.
yeah, sorry.
I don't think he knocked up Isaac when he was 14.
No, but
I mean, why not though? If he's supposed
I
to be
would've
all
known about that.
powerful, he could do it.
No, because I remember that in Genesis 18, that was the chapter that we talked about the binding of Isaac. I said that there was a midrash that said that Isaac was the one who suggested to be bound. So I thought that maybe I'll connect.
Oh,
it failed
okay.
miserably.
Yeah.
Those
No, the
Jewish
bondage.
rabbis, man.
The bondage sex comes later, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Verses 18 to
So
26. Sorry.
Kip, where'd you get 14 for Mary?
What is the commonly accepted age for Mary? Is it 12 or is it 14? I was being generous.
He was.
I was just curious where you guys got those numbers from, but
It's the accepted tradition, and we'll get into that in more detail at the time. But yeah,
10 years from
14
now.
is
If
the
you want to ask
nicest
Kip, we got him
version.
here. He could probably tell us.
Kip, how old was Mary?
Oh wait, your mic is muted, Kip.
Kill?
We can't hear
I thought
you.
it was Kip that made the comment. I could be wrong.
No, it was Aaron.
Can-
Aaron said.
Okay. I'll continue. Meanwhile, verses 18 to 26. Sana comments. The topics in this section are associated with those of the preceding because the narrative about the golden calf recounts that a quote festival of the Lord was proclaimed and burnt offerings and sacrifices were brought in 32 verses 5 to 6. So does Bechoshel say. Similarly, when Jeroboam set up golden calves at Dan and Bethel, he too invented a special festival in 1 Kings 12 verses 28 to 33. Hence the need to recapitulate the list of the legitimate festivals of Israel. These have previously been set forth in 23 verses 12 to 19. Wait, maybe Keith, do you wanted to say?
Oh, no, somebody was asking about marriageable age. I mean, we're
Mary's
just,
age,
Mary's
specifically.
age, right? And we just have no idea. But traditionally speaking, within as far as we know, and we draw this stuff because it's never spelled out clearly in the text themselves. So we try to draw this stuff out comparatively by looking at what other cultures in the region around the same time we're doing, and by and large, as soon as a girl had passed through puberty, she was of marriageable age. So any point from then on, which for a girl can happen as early as what, 9 or
13?
10.
In Jewish
But
tradition,
most
isn't that the
common,
bat
it's
mitzvah?
yeah.
No,
Yeah,
but
bat
mitzvah is
mitzvah,
12.
13.
12, yeah.
Yeah,
Same as the
Nice
bar
try,
mitzvah.
but
Aaron.
it's yeah, it's as soon as a girl has had her period, she is free to get married. Was kind of the
What
I
was
have-
the church saying?
I don't know.
I have heard the argument that at least in
Okay.
Luke's version, she can be considered to have been before the age of menses because, for one, it's a little bit like if she's already engaged, why is it? Oh, I can't have a baby. I'm a virgin. Like you're going to get married soon. It's not really surprising, but also that there's a certain symmetry between Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist, the wife of Zachariah, being too old to bear children, and then it being miraculous that she bears John, and then Mary, the mother of Jesus, being too young to bear children, and thus miraculous that she bears Jesus.
But she is engaged to Joseph when the
Yes.
events of the conception take place, so theoretically she should be of age to at least get engaged.
Not technically, no, because engagement is a contract. You could arrange an engagement contract when kids are 4. Like
Well, that's
it's
true.
like
There's a lot of royals who do that, yeah.
I did
Yeah,
want to bring that
like-
up. The wedding, when we say engagement today, it's not the same thing as what it meant back then.
mhm.
In Jewish law in the halacha, there are kind of 2 bits of marriage. I can't remember the words exactly, but nowadays they actually do both of those things on the wedding day, and an
Oh, okay.
engagement is just an announcement. But back then they would have actually had done the first bit of the wedding, the woman that is not there's a word for it, meant for someone, whatever. Like there was, as you said, a contract would have been written, and then the wedding would have been like the consummating it. So
Yeah,
there would
there
have been
was
a
there
long
was a
period.
ceremony involved potentially with the engagement of yeah.
Yeah.
But
So a young girl could have been what's the word? Like set aside for marriage already to a specific person, and she would not be, if she were to have sex with someone else, it would be considered adultery. even if she wasn't
Intended, do you
married.
mean?
Yeah, like intended or whatever the word is, but yeah, like
Betrothed.
yeah, like the bit that we were talking about a few episodes ago about the
because women were married off by their families. It's not like they had any choice 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So it's
but
also
it was
like
a long period though.
yeah, no, for a long time that's what marriage was. It was
She
a
would
a
continue living at her
contract.
father's home until the actual wedding, but
Yeah. Well, and even in Fiddler on the Roof, after the 3 daughters have had chosen their own marriages, and there's been all the fuss, and then there's the young daughters, and the matchmaker comes before they leave the village, which is this, and get kicked out, and says, "Hey, how about we engage your daughters to these little boys?" And these just kids sitting around picking their noses, and it's like,
Yeah,
well,
but
which
by
one
then
to
the
which one?
engagement
It doesn't
would
matter.
I'm sorry
Yeah,
to
but by
interrupt you,
then
but
the
I feel
engagement
like
would have just been like an announcement. It wouldn't
Yeah.
I got to
been-
tell
think, like,
Isaac and
it's fine.
Tomer,
Yeah.
just so you know, Americans, if were it not for Fiddler on the Roof, we would have no idea how anybody did anything in Jewish history.
I feel
It's a
like
great
we have.
resource.
I feel like we diverge on the subject too much, so I'll.
Oh, very
Okay.
bad.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
All right,
so,
do we want to continue reading then?
you know what I'm going to say here, right?
I
should-
haven't finished
should
my
finish the chapter.
commentary.
Exactly. I haven't.
Okay, we're doing a drinking
finished.
game.
Yeah, yeah.
Next time,
Mm.
drinking game.
Good plan. Good
Okay. Verse 21, 7 Ezra, part 2.
Oh yeah.
Scripture states, at plowing times and harvest time, because human life is dependent principally on these activities. Anan, may his name be erased like a cloud, says that
This
the
is-
reference is to sexual relations. Will Anan not be covered with shame? We will grant that it is in the hand of a man to plow, charish. However, Anan is silent, yacharish, with regard to the word harvest.
Yeah, Anand was one of the founders or something of the Karaite movement,
Yeah.
which are like
And yeah,
Jewish offshoot of rabbinical Judaism that rejects the oral law.
yeah, they're all the only.
Yeah, so
living
kind of
alive.
like the Sadducees or
Okay.
in First
So
Temple Judaism and Second Temple
splinter
Judaism,
group.
but they were
Vastly
actually
hated
later.
by other groups.
And
Okay.
and
So
just
they
and
still
just
have like their own
Sorry.
interpretation, even though they reject
yeah,
the
Ben Sutta
interpretation.
was a Karaite as well.
Although I have to ask then, if harvest means giving birth, like I'm pretty sure the baby comes when it's gonna frickin' come and it doesn't care if it's the Sabbath.
That's the whole. That's his problem. That's what he's saying. It doesn't make any sense to if you're saying that
Yeah.
the sowing means having sex, then harvest means having a baby. So it doesn't make sense in this. So it must be talking about literally the harvest and sowing.
And I will also point out that Anan in Hebrew means cloud, so that's why he said may his name be erased like a cloud. Verse 27. For in accordance with these words, in Hebrew Bible reads Al pi hadvarim ha'ele, which could also be read as by the mouth of these words. This led to Chazal in the Jerusalem Talmud Pe'ah 2.6, Megillah 4.1, and Babylonian Talmud Gittin 60b to conclude that this refers to the oral Torah. Because of course it does.
Well, I mean, also because it
fun.
says write. It says Moses should write these words.
Yes.
Write for yourself these words. So that could also be inferred to say, so write these things you write, but there are certain things that you don't write.
Yes. In verse 28, the Ten Commandments, while many scholars believe that this refers to the ritual Decalogue, as it is commonly known, Prop disagrees. He writes that Exodus 34:1 and Deuteronomy 10 verses 1 to 4 understand the Ten Commandments, quote unquote, to be the same on the first and second tablets.
Oh, so it just listed a bunch of stuff, but then it says the Ten Commandments, but it's actually referencing the first ones that we read.
Yes.
Because
So
we should interpret the text by what it says.
I actually wonder if this story from when Moses is writing the second, God calls him up to the mountain in the morning and he writes the tablets, the same as the first ones. I wonder if this whole story is just another story, and the redactor has gone in and said, "Well, no, this is not a different story. This is the same story that happened later." And he had to make a second pair, but really they were just two different origins.
And there is the hypothesis that there's certain verses in 34, like half of the first verse and a bit of the fourth verse that are like, this looks like stitching by the redactor. Like the first ones that I will write on the words that were the first tablets which you broke, which is, oh, look at it pretty.
Aaron, do you want to read the comment? Sorry.
Yes. So let me see. This one was all right. Frederick Agabo says Denmark is also mostly cultural Christian, both the people and clergy. I've talked with 6 priests, and 4 of them called themselves philosophical Christians, whatever that means.
Kierkegaard,
then
yes,
Eric,
maybe.
And then Eric Wander says, so if you have to put the 10 Commandments in chronological order, which list would be first? Also, would you put them in order? Also, if you put them in order, will that eliminate the contradictions? No, it will not.
I think
They don't
if I read correctly, I think that most scholars think that the ritual Decalogue is the earliest of the Decalogues.
Yes, I was about to say this is.
Oh, she
At least
froze.
documentary hypothesis. You're looking at source. This is old. Sorry, this would be Yahweh's source. So we're looking at Southern Kingdom of Judah. This is before the canonization, and the actual original 10 that they inserted in, at the beginning of that bit of the story is, ooh, nice ring, is definitely, a later edition priestly source, which, obviously makes a lot more sense for the basis of a legal system too, because you have things like murder and theft and perjury that, should be covered. Should be covered in a legal system.
It's interesting that they put it first as the one that got broken.
Yeah, and
Well-
That's the
it is
redactors.
interesting, but it's
Oh.
they clearly wanted to give it primacy in the
Yeah,
narrative.
Yeah.
the priestly writer who's probably also the first redactor is
Yeah.
providing priority to his own material, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right, because it.
and you see this you see this throughout the Genesis
Oh, yeah.
portion of the narrative as
Right.
well. Hey, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to run, guys. I've got another appointment here in a bit.
Sure
But,
thing.
You're off to
Thank
deep
you.
drinks, aren't you?
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
being on, Kip.
Sure, no
Yeah.
problem.
Let's
I'll come back again sometime.
Thank you
Sounds
very
fun.
much.
You bet.
We'll
Later,
see
guys.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so Charlie Melanie says, even if the inception was painless, I think we all know the birth of Jesus couldn't have been a painless process. God promised Eve he would always make it painful.
Inception, is that a word that means being inseminated? Like
It
to
I don't
be
know how they meant that.
inception. It's a
well,
cool
yeah,
word,
the
but
conception of Jesus would not have been painful, as presumably she would not
Yeah.
have been conscious of it in any way. There wouldn't be any need to be if God just magicked sperm somewhere inside.
I don't even
Oh,
know
Aaron
if
left.
sperm was strictly necessary.
yeah, I don't think it's the word.
I
The
found
what-
out from a geneticist
But it's a
yesterday
cool word.
that out of the 8 billion people on the planet, we have 3 confirmed cases of parthenogenesis of humans
Ooh.
alive right now.
Really, actual parthenogenesis. But in fairness, you can only get a woman through parthenogenesis, which means Jesus would have had to have been trans. So
Precisely.
I don't see it as a word in the dictionary, so maybe it's like
Yeah, it's not a real word, but I like that he's created created this word, and I think it's a pretty cool word. The
Yeah.
inception with an S.
Yeah, and I also
sorry.
find the claim of human parthenogenesis extraordinary. I'm not aware of any examples through mammalians. That's it. I mean, we know
actually,
of Komodo dragons, we know of some pythons, a few other things, but
An entire
I'm
bunch
not
of
aware of
lizards.
one mammal, much less a primate, that
Remember-
underwent parthenogenesis. So I'd need to see studies about that.
Yeah, I'd like to see specifics myself because it's an interesting story. I was just saying that I was talking to a geneticist the other day who tells me that there are 3 confirmed cases, but I haven't seen the confirmation myself.
of human.
Human
Yes, humans.
parthenogenesis.
Yeah, and we
Maybe
are
maybe she
definitely
maybe the
mammals.
mother maybe she just went in the swimming pool after a man, you know.
Well, I assume they determined it by genetic testing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
find that the
One would
offspring
hope.
exactly matched
Oh.
the mother.
Is it because of is it like a chimerism thing possibly maybe?
Sort of. It doesn't. need to
Objection
be
calls for speculation.
But yeah, it's sort of like all the genetic material would have to come from the mother. In that case, I'm pretty sure that the lizards that do it are pretty much just cloning themselves. But
Yeah.
it's so rare for mammals. It's possible there would be some kind of other situation going on.
The news said there was a crocodile that did it recently, but I don't believe it.
Well, there are
Aaron-
some reptiles, but they're all the only vertebrates that I know of that are capable of parthenogenesis are all diapsid. There's not one synapsid.
Those lesbian lizards.
again, I'm
Yeah, but
sorry
they're
that I'm
they're
interjecting.
diapsids.
I'm sorry that I'm interjecting, but I think we're diverging again.
Oh,
and
very
I would
much.
like
Okay.
to finish this chapter.
Okay,
Aaron?
so continue reading. So we are on 29, yes?
Yes.
When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. When Aaron and the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them. So Aaron and the leaders of the community came back to him, and they spoke to them. Afterward, all of the Israelites came near him, and he gave them all the commands the Lord had given him on the Mount Sinai. And they all walked him into dark tents just to see his head glow. When Moses finished speaking to them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he entered the Lord's presence to speak with him, he removed the veil until he came out. And when he came out, he told the Israelites what he had been commanded. They saw that his face was radiant. Then Moses would put the veil back over his face until he went in to speak with the Lord. And he did this until he died of radiation poisoning.
Look for the man with the glowing head.
So my only comment on this part is about the face was radiant. In Hebrew, it's karan or panav. Kasuto writes that the word karan, translated to radiant, is a verb derived from the noun keren as a ray of light, in Hebrew keren or, like in Habakkuk 3:4. Malul comments, we know from Babylon the phrase pulchu u melamu, awe and respect. The first part denotes a big fiery robe that surrounded the god, and the second, a type of head covering or a glowing mask that caused fear and respect to those around. These attributes could have been associated with kings, priests, and temples, and therefore the Assyrian kings could, in their writings, marvel that their quote awe and respect unquote shocked their enemies, gave them cold feet, and thus were defeated in battle. Keren could also mean horn. Sana comments, that's what's the uncoded formula. Keren could also mean horn. Sana comments, the association of Karan and Keren gave rise to the mistaken notion that Moses grew horns, even though the text speaks not of his head, but of the skin of his face. The rendering of Karan by Kornuta in the Vulgate translation, based on the commentaries of Jerome, helped foster the error, and a horned Moses later became a familiar figure in art from the 11th century on. The most famous such portrayal is, of course, Michelangelo's at San Pietro in Vincoli, Rome.
Mhm.
And my final savage Jimenez was so. Before that, maybe discuss a bit about the radiance.
Well, that's true. I've seen those paintings of Moses having horns because the word horn and light are basically the same in the Bible.
Yeah. And horns are
It happens.
emblematic of power, as you see with all the references to the bull's horns that are actually references to the god El, but we'll get there.
Yeah, the word in Hebrew, Karen, means a corner, Karen, corner, and horn, and can also, I guess, with slightly different.
Is there a context in
localization.
Hebrew where the word
Hmm?
Karen also means want to speak to the manager?
Unfortunately,
I
no.
thought that God was the manager.
Yeah, and then of course this word, which means ray of light, which I guess visually can look like a horn, maybe.
I don't know how they screwed that up 1,000 years ago. I have no idea.
Well, it looks like the word in Latin for
It's also
horn
probably,
is also
Yeah,
is also corn. So
they
like
translated it wrong
corn.
in Latin. That's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
It was the Latin that's the Latin translated.
But it could be
screwed up.
it could have been that in Latin the word cornutu or whatever meant horns as well as rays of light. So it could have been later on when they lost the context and they were like, well, here's a word that in Latin means horns, but they forgot that it also means rays of light. So it could have been that the original Vulgate translation were just using a word that meant two things.
That certainly happens in language all the time. Language evolves. Just like life.
Okay, so my final savage Ibn Ezra. Aaron will probably like this guy. So Ibn Ezra basically latches on a person named Khivi al-Balkhi. And basically he was like a very early biblical critic. He wrote a treatise or a work that contained 200 objections to the divine origin of the Bible. And his work was widely popular. He lived in the 9th century, I believe, and his work was so popular amongst people that Sadiq Gaon had to write like a treatise against a rebuttal against his work. And unfortunately, we don't have both of their works. We do have some fragments of Khivi's claims, and unfortunately, I had the option of putting his Ibn Ezra's commentary on Khivi, but unfortunately I didn't because I'm a stupid person. So I have here I have the Savage Ibn Ezra part for Khivi as well. And he goes in a very polite manner. May the bones of Khivi the transgressor be crushed. For Chivi said that Moses' face turned dry as a horn because he did not eat bread. Chivi similarly explains, and they were afraid in verse 30, as meaning they were afraid because Moses' face was ugly. Now, why did this cursed wretch not open his eyes? A person will only fear to approach someone because there is something strange in him which he has never even seen before. There is no person who's never looked upon the face of a corpse that does not fear to approach a dead body.
I don't know about these dudes, man. I just can't handle it.
This is pretty metal. I didn't realize that they were throwing down in the synagogue like that.
So
They're all
much
making
Well,
up
rage.
stuff in there, and
Was
now
the first
they make up
guy-
stuff the entire time, and now they're going at each other with their made up stuff.
Well, this guy, this Chivi al-Balkhi, he wasn't a Jewish person, was he?
It's not real clear. Some say he was Jewish. Some say he was maybe a member of a Gnostic Christian sect. Some claim that he was a member of an ancient Bukharan Jewish community, but it's not really clear.
But he would have
Is
been
claiming
considered
that
more of an
someone's-
apostate.
Oh, I was going to ask, is claiming that someone is really secretly a Christian to discredit their thoughts in Judaism, is that similar to like when the Christians claim that we're all Satanists because we're evil and whatnot?
Not really.
No.
There are cases of Jewish people that have people that claim to be Jewish that turned out to be undercover Christians.
Oh,
I
can
like
see
those
that.
guys.
When
When
you like
when
the
they,
guys
when they,
who
re-
go undercover as missionaries.
Lying
when they
for the
when
Lord.
they come out before they die and they write little encoded letters.
No,
No,
I'm
they're
talking
not
about people
writing
that the
encoded
police
letters. They're
There's a
just
couple of them that
liars.
have done it.
I'm talking about the people who got arrested for fraud because they went into a community and were missionizing to them under false pretenses. Yeah.
As Jewish, they
No,
were
they
out
weren't
there
Jews.
as,
They were
but
American.
they were out there
they were
pretending they were
Christian
Jews.
missionaries
Yes.
that learnt how to behave as if they were Orthodox Jewish, and then infiltrated the community.
And they got arrested for being Christians. No, I don't know. I was talking
for
about
No, they
something.
got
missionizing.
arrested for being frauds.
Yeah.
Maybe don't be a fraud.
Mm.
Yeah. You can't. I think if it was in Israel, they could get in trouble just for being missionaries. But especially if they were undercover, then yeah.
Lying about stuff.
I wonder if we can do that with apologists running around today.
Lying for Jesus. And that makes it okay.
If Christian frauds all went to jail, half of evangelical Christianity would shut down immediately.
Why do you say Christian frauds? Why be redundant?
Economy of language is
Oh,
important.
You know,
Hey, I've known sincere Christians. I've been a sincere Christian, but I will say with apologists and televangelists, definitely those words are synonymous.
All right, so this was the last show for June, and we will be meeting again on Saturday the 1st.
July, yes.
Yes, and we will be doing Exodus 35.
And maybe we will
Anything-
finish this book because
Yeah.
35 to 40, they don't really say a lot. And my commentary on these chapters is very minimal. Maybe we'll finish it, maybe not. We'll see how
It's
how
probably
much.
going to take 2 episodes, but I feel like we can power through it because we're getting right back into the priestly source and the rambling, boring stuff. So
Yeah.
unless we turn over a rock and find Jesus, and then we're gonna have to go on another.
So we'll finally get to Exodus from Exodus. Because it is getting tiresome for me.
I'm sure Isaac at some point the next 4 chapters may mention a fish, and then P-Town will say, "See, fish, that's the symbol of Jesus. See, there's Jesus right there." So something along those lines.
Yeah. Basically.
water, light, and bread.
I'm
Makes it
okay
easy.
with.
And a rock.
How far away are
I'm
we
pretty
from
much
the...
okay with skipping 5 chapters of the Tabernacle again.
That was
Fair, fair.
But we must be thorough, P-Town, after all.
Oh yeah.
It's
We got to
the
make sure
word
that
of
these
God.
stiff-necked Jews actually did what God commanded them. We got to make Sure. So let's do it.
I hear stiff neck.
Somebody remind me, what does stiff necked mean again?
It's not. It's
Oh.
not what you think. It's not
It
naked.
means either. I think that
Stiff-necked.
we brought it up. That either means that you don't put your head down, like
Or
you,
that,
you always
or
like.
resembling
Stubborn.
a donkey and its yoke. that is-
Stubborn.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
someone
stubborn.
who refuses to take the yoke up on themselves.
Yes.
Yeah,
opposed
okay.
to being
They will
stiff-
not bend.
As opposed to
Yeah.
being stiff-necked, which means you're naked and stiff.
Okay.
Sounds much more
It's a
fun.
I'd
Texas.
rather be a naked stiff. All right. Closing comments, anyone?
Oh, I suggest that because the next couple chapters are going to be very dull, I'm definitely getting down on the, but I haven't completed my commentary drinking game. So
True.
imbibe wisely, though. Take a sip, not a shot.
We need to come up with like a tabernacle drinking game, like every time they say shackles or something.
And it came to pass.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, see, we can't do that for Book of Mormon because we'll all die of alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it only works when Alonso reads from the KJV, but
Yeah.
We're gonna work
All
with it.
right. Thank you all. See you this weekend.
Bye bye, everybody.
Later, folks.